Butterfly doors, butterfly doors. Now my life going up, butterfly doors.
Hello, everybody. You're now tuned to the Love First podcast. It's your boy, Kata Don.
It's your boy, Wraith.
Yes, we have a very special guest with us right before the election season. You know, want to talk to you guys, inspire you guys to go out and vote. Right now, we have Miss Sandra, who's a historian for the Democratic Women of Mecklenburg County in North Carolina. Hey, Miss Sandra, how you doing today?
I'm good, Kata Don and Wraith. I'm good. How you guys doing?
Good, man.
All right.
We're definitely excited to have you on. You know, with us, we like to hear about both sides to really know what's going on and understand why you're passionate about your side, which is the Democratic side. Let's actually start with the video that you created, which everyone can find on our Love First Facebook page and on the Kata Don YouTube channel. So you guys can find the video, and it's under DWMC, you know, for the Democratic Women of Mecklenburg County. Can you actually tell us what made you create the video?
Well, being the historian for the DWMC, and I'm always digitizing news clippings and things like that, I try to think of a project that would be good and would tell a little history of the DWMC, and then also be a boost to the Democratic female candidates that are running locally in Charlotte. I wanted to give them a boost and a cheer on. So I figured I would find these dynamic women in history to inspire us, okay? And so I picked these women, you know, Fannie Lou Hamer, Barbara Jordan, Shirley Chisholm. I even go all the way up to Hillary Clinton. These are women I have a lot of respect for. I think were very competent, and they did well. You know, they broke through barriers. They were first, okay? Whether it be first Congresswoman or first woman to start the Democratic Freedom Drive, so that, like with Fannie Lou Hamer, she represented Mississippi, and she had a Democratic Freedom group that represented Mississippi, because prior to that, they had an all-white male group, and they were representing Mississippi, and that didn't make any sense, because that they wouldn't be looking out for the people, the Mississippians. So these women have done first, and they inspire me, and I think they should inspire other women. And these are the shoulders that we stand on, and hopefully when we leave, the next generation will be standing on our shoulders and continue the pace on.
Definitely. Yeah, so out of, because you had a lot of amazing women in there. So out of all the women in there, who would you say inspired you the most?
You know, let me just tell you something. I love all these women that are in here, but the woman that inspired me the most is Naomi Marie Virginia Ross Dickerson, my mother. That's it. I mean, I can like them. I love my mother. Okay.
Yeah.
She was some kind of woman. So very vibrant, very smart, very intelligent. Started out very young. So that's it. I'm not going to grab one woman and say, oh, one of them inspired me more than the other. No. Naomi Marie Dickerson.
So my question is, why did you and your mother decide to support the Democratic Party over the Republican Party, over Independent? What was it about the Democratic Party that stood out to you guys?
Well, you got to understand that even though I have always been a registered Democrat, I have crossed over the line and voted for Republican too. And I did back in the 1970s with for the mayor John Lindsay, because he was just very good. I like when people represent. I don't mind crossing over, but I am a registered Democrat. But you have to understand, Democrats represent the people, okay? The people. They're not representing big business and big money. They're representing the people. And they're looking out for the people. And like I even state in the video, it's the Democrats that came up Democrat presidents that came up with Medicare, okay, and Social Security. These are things that help people survive, the little people. You know, they're not, so Democrats are for the little people. They're for the little people.
Yeah. Okay. And what I really respected what you said, you know, of what brought you to the Democratic Party, but also that you're a free thinker, and you said there was times that you've crossed the aisle depending on the issues and what was going on. So I definitely respect that a lot, you know, definitely respect
Absolutely.
that.
And I would
What
still do
gravitates you to.
that. I would still do that, but the person I cross over for has to be better than the Democratic candidate that's running.
Exactly. So what I would say, why do you trust? Because I'm assuming you're voting Democratic this year, right? So
Yes, indeed.
so why do you trust Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to be able to crush this virus than over our current president right now?
To be able to what? Did you say crush
To
this
crush
virus?
this virus, yeah, end this pandemic and crush the coronavirus.
Well, first of all, he is a man with intelligence. He is a man that has the background in politics and working with former President Barack Obama. He has negotiated with different countries, and he is talking sensible. And when he comes on TV, he's wearing a mask to cover his face. Our commander-in-chief doesn't wear a mask except for a photo op, and then he can't even keep it on that long. He takes it off. So, and he listens to science. Joe Biden listens to science.
Yeah.
You know that President Trump does not listen to science. He doesn't believe in it. He probably will only believe in it when something hits him and knocks him down. He doesn't believe in it. So he only believes in his own ideologies, and that's very limiting. So no, it's hard for us to appreciate him as a president. And he has done, am I allowed to say something negative about him?
Speak freely.
He is the most corrupt president I have ever experienced in my lifetime. Plus, I'll be, you know.
Yeah. Well, could you at least give an example, though? Because if you do say that on the podcast, at least give an example, you know?
Give an example of how he's been corrupt?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Let me see. How has he been? Let me count the ways. There's so many ways.
Just one.
It's unlimited. Now, let me just talk about one thing now. I'll just mention one thing. You know, as president, he's not supposed to be operating any businesses, right? And he's got golf courses, he's got hotels and stuff like that. And he was supposed to be turning that over to his children. So, well, what do you think his sons do? They come back and they report to him. They mix the stuff up in the White House. When Trump has people over to Mar-a-Lago, where he loves to go to have his meetings, these people are forced to become a member of his club. They're there for a meeting to negotiate, and he pressures them to become members of his club. So he thinks he's some kind of godfather. Well, oh yeah, I'm going to do something for you. I'm going to put you in my cabinet. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But have you joined my club? And so the pressure's on for them to join his club.
So
you know,
and I know a lot of that happens in politics. But I guess what I feel like right now in the country is that there's a lot of like division. Like even with Republicans and Democrats, you kind of feel that way too?
Yeah.
Like a lot of division. So, and a lot of the president's reasoning or excuses will be that, hey, you know, the other side blocked me from doing this. This is why I couldn't do this or get things done. So do we feel like, you know, with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that they'll be able to bring us closer away from this division that we have now? Because we seem more divided than ever.
I think with Joe Biden's personality, he's always, even as being a VP with President Obama, he was always going across the aisles, like he dealt with Kane, the guy that just passed away a little more than a year ago. And what's his name, John Kane? And so he always worked that way. And you can see he's kind of a peaceable man. And friendly, he can work with people. That's not a problem. Kamala Harris, now, I don't know that much about her. I just know of her record. It seemed like it's been really terrific. She's been a prosecutor. She's prosecuted people on some serious crimes. And of course, I hear people say that she may have had people in jail too long. I don't know. But that's why prison reform has to be worked out too. They need to do something for those people that have not committed serious crimes. They need to lessen their sentence and review it. And I believe that will be something that Joe Biden, I haven't heard him talk about it, but I think that's something he's going to be looking at. Because even Trump was pressured to look at it, and he released this one woman, I can't think of her name, a Black woman that's been in jail for like 15, 16 years. And what's her name? Kim Kardashian spoke to him about releasing this woman. And I thought it was very interesting because, we just know her as a model and having a reality show. So I thought to myself, why is she doing this? I mean, that's a good humanitarian thing to do. But then I read later, she's actually studying law. Her father was a well-known lawyer. So I guess she figured this would be a case she could work on and prove and bring it to Trump's attention. And he released the woman. But, when you looked at Trump when he signed the paper, he looked dumbfounded, like he didn't even know what he was doing. But he should have no problem releasing people. He pardoned all those crooked people that were working with him in the White House, Stone and others. He won't pardon Cohen because Cohen probably told too much about him. And he demands loyalty. As crooked as he is as a president, he demands loyalty. But he doesn't have compassion for people. He really doesn't. And yes, I can hear you.
So for people who've never voted before, how do they go about, like, as far as the voting process, how do they go about doing that?
Okay, well, right now you're having early voting in New York, is that right?
Yeah, it should start 10 days before the actual election date.
Okay, well, let me say something. If you've never voted before, the time to register to vote is now during early voting. You can't do it election day. But anytime during early voting, you can register to vote and then vote at the same time, okay? But not on election day can you register, okay? So please, any of your friends or people, get them out there to vote. I was trying to see something.
And it's important too, we want people to know too, so when you guys are voting, this is not just for the presidency, this is for, your local government.
It's local offices, right, exactly.
The people that affect you guys on a daily basis,
It affects you, and you get to know these people, especially if you live in your community. Like I have a Jeff Jackson running as representative, and Cynthia Wallace. I see these people almost every week, because especially now because they've been doing a lot of campaigning, and I've donated to a couple of times, and that's, it's pretty good because this is money that you cannot put on your taxes and get money back for making a donation. When you make donations to charity, it's okay, but not political donations, no. So that means that you must really believe in them when you put your money up. That's what I think. And it's really
and so anybody that could be worried about the safety as far as going out to vote, because you voted early, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us, was there anything that made you feel a little safe?
Well, I wasn't sure how I was going to do this. I sent for absentee ballot because I said, I might not be feeling good and maybe I'll just go ahead and send it in. But I prefer, because with all the talk with Trump and worrying about the mail, I don't want to have to worry about that. I don't want to have to worry about anybody infiltrating the mail like Russians or anybody else. So I said, you know what? As long as I'm feeling up to it, I'm going to go in. So I picked a school by me, Audrey Kell, and I said, I'm going to go there, not the first day because I was busy anyway. That was last Thursday. I said, I'll try the next day, make sure everything is running all right. So I went there probably about 9:45. And there was no line outside of the school. I said, they must have a big line inside. I go inside, there may be 10 people in front of me. I was out of there in 15 minutes. So let me tell you what they did, which I thought was very good. First of all, when you came in, they gave you a pen, a stylus on one end and a writing pen on the other end. On the pen, it says, I voted in 2020 election. Your vote counts, North Carolina. Now, I don't know if they're doing that in New York or other places. And then this stylus, they wipe off the screen after each person uses it. And then you go up there and you use this stylus to make your votes. Okay? So it's pretty simple. But
and then they give you the pen to keep. Yeah, so because you're not even sharing the pen because they gave it to you to keep. So cool.
Exactly. No, you don't share it at all. As a matter of fact, I like the idea of it being a souvenir. I asked the woman, I said, is it possible I can have an extra one? And she said, oh yeah, sure. And I was surprised she did that because they could run out of pens and then somebody wouldn't have it. But yeah, it's just nice. It was just good. And I was out there in 15 minutes. So try to choose a time that you think might not be so crowded. Always when a place opens up, there's a line of people waiting to vote. So if the voting opens at 7:30, you try going there about 8:30 or 9 o'clock. You know, try to avoid rush hours because that makes it tremendous. You hear what's happening in Georgia and other places where they've been online to vote for 5 hours, 11 hours. That's ridiculous. And a lot of those people are disabled and wheelchairs. It's a bit much. And they could have a stroke while they're out there. By the way,
what were you about to say?
Just going to say, all this week, we're having temperature in the 80s. All right? What are y'all having in New York? I'm just curious.
In New York, we're in like the 60s.
50s, 60s.
Yeah, 50s, 60s. Yeah, we're not like North Carolina.
Well, you can come down here whenever you like. You know, I got
you. And yes, and to our audience too, if you want to know more information about voting, where you can vote, what time it is, how to register, vote.org. The link will be in this description too.
I think you should go to vote.org because they're going to have the list of all the things. I mean, I have some lists here because
on the news, everyone is saying that a higher percentage, almost double, like is coming out for the early voting than what Republicans are. And they're saying that it's a strong Democratic percentage. But I want the Democrats too and the Republicans, everyone, don't confuse that, right? Because it's understood too that most Republicans will vote on election day. So if you are a Democrat, don't look at it as like, oh, I don't need to go vote because we're coming on the news. That's what's on the news. Mm-hmm. No, that's not what that means. Don't pay attention to those numbers. Get out. Make sure your voice is heard because both sides, a lot of people are going to be voting. So just make sure you get out so you can be heard. Mm-hmm.
Right. Absolutely. Do not take anything for granted because a lot of people took 2016 for granted. But you can see Hillary, although she won most of the popular votes, it was like, was it 3 million ahead of him? But you have this electoral college and this plays in terms of how many people are representative in different states. So no, don't fool around, vote. But I think we have more younger people voting now. When you have people staying online for hours to vote, that means voting is very important to them. If you don't vote, I'm gonna tell you right now, you are hurting, you're hurting, and it's just like you're voting for the wrong person. The one you definitely don't want, that's the one you're making it easier for him to get in. So you must vote if you wanna have some say. Otherwise, you don't need to complain about nothing. You gotta go out there and vote.
Yeah, and honestly, Ms. Sandra, we want to thank you for your time.
It was my pleasure.
You know, and really inspiring.
It was my pleasure. So please get more people to look at that video because I do touch on a few stuff that's going on now with the climate. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Katie Don and Wraith.
Yes.
Good afternoon.
You too. It's the Love First podcast. Well, hey, when you can love first. The Love First podcast.
Love first.
Right. We gotta show love first like a podcast. Put the work in, trying to make it last. Seen enough deaths, I don't need no more. It's like our nation trying to start a civil war. We gotta show love first like a podcast. Put the work in, trying to make it last. Seen enough deaths, I don't need no more. It's like our nation trying to start a civil war. Indian, Asian, and white. Whole lives matter, but let's get it right. There's a specific group of people needing help right now. All lives matter, yeah, no, calm down. So can we get together, stop the
Hello, everybody. We're back at the Love First podcast. It's K to Dime.
And it's Wraith.
Yes, we have a very special guest. We have Mr. Steve, an amazing freelance journalist that's been covering U.S. news for BBC and Europe and Australia. He has a lot of insight he wants to bring to us as far as regarding the Republican Party. He also supports President Donald Trump, and he has some reasons he wants to share of why you guys should vote for him when you guys go out to the voting polls. So this is giving everyone a chance to hear both sides and give further clarity to help them make their decision. Mr. Steve, how you doing today?
Great, K to Don. Hey, Wraith.
How you doing?
We're glad to have you
Great.
on here with us. We're glad to have you, man.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
So what we want to do is definitely get clarity on Trump's policies. And we also want to address what is he going to do for the Black community. You know, a lot of our audience are Black, and they want to know how we can be successful with another 4 years of Trump in office. And we also want to kind of come at some perceptions of maybe Trump that's out there and see if we can address and maybe clear anything up on that aspect.
No problem.
Awesome. So as far as President Trump's plan to destroy the coronavirus and get us back to some sense of normalcy, does President Trump have a plan for that? Some people feel he doesn't have a plan that could be better. Some people say, hey, this is a pandemic that no one's ever dealt with before, and he's doing a good job for the cards that he was dealt. So what would you say on how do you see his plan?
Well, the plan is to have vaccines ready to go once there's approval in a vaccine, because that's really the only way you're going to get rid of this virus. No one's gotten rid of it. During the course of the last year, everyone seemed very impressed with what Europe was doing, Germany, France. Go look at it now. Germany's shut everything down for a month, and France has shut things down as well. It's very difficult to contain a virus. So what President Trump has done, it's called Operation Warp Speed. He has 3 companies who are working on vaccines. And when each or all get approval, they're ready to go. He has the Army working on distribution for that as well. So at this point, you deal with it the best you can. There are therapeutics out there. Look how he survived, that he promised to give Regeneron, one of the medications he took that he believes in heavily, to anyone who needs it for free. So he's out there. He's out everywhere, right? He is fighting for this country, and that's what I admire about him very much.
Yeah, so I guess a lot of the critics would kind of point to the fact that, you know, based off the CDC guidelines, with them saying that we would have a lot of advantages to wearing the mask and the death toll would be a little lower. We could really save lives wearing masks. Now, President Trump has been on the news saying he supports masks. He doesn't have a problem with masks. But the thing is, he's not making it mandatory at his crowds like how some businesses do, you know, whenever he does his rallies. And he doesn't really showcase or I guess take a bunch of photos and videos with the mask, really showing his strong support for it through his actions.
Right. Look, I think that's a fair point. People should be wearing masks because it does seem to be important in terms of mitigating the spread. But at the same time, he's making the point that we're a free people. We are a free society as well. And if you do look when he gives a speech or a rally, most of the people behind him are wearing masks that say MAGA on it. But look, it's hypocrisy that's been pointed out as well during the peaceful protests, or some were generally peaceful, but others were, sorry to say, riots, right, looting, and a lot of the Democratic politicians didn't seem to have much of a problem with that. And what happened to the issue of spread and the disease at that time? At that time, it was, social justice is more important than the disease. A lot of businesses that wanted to open up and were going to be listening to the guidelines, and they couldn't open up either. And this all seemed to turn the whole issue of masks as a political weapon that was being used. Having said that, I do think he probably should have stressed wearing masks a bit more because the other side have been using it against him in an unfair way. Frankly, anything he does is unfair. He should probably have said, let's everyone wear masks. And then the other side would have said, no, let's not wear masks. So it's almost, whatever it says, it's sort of the opposite. But yeah, but I think all that aside, most people can make up their own minds whether or not to wear it or not. Most seem to do that. We're not children.
Yeah, I can agree on that. I guess I would say a very important question to especially our viewers, young African Americans that have dreams of being entrepreneurs. Because on this show, we want to give keys to success, how you can start a business, maybe turn your side hustle to a main hustle. So we want to know, with another 4 years of Trump, or even just more the Republican Party being in charge and that leadership, what will they do that's going to allow for more Black entrepreneurs or just financial opportunity in general?
Well, that's a great question, Kate and Don, because President Trump has just recently announced what he's called the Platinum Plan. And in the Platinum Plan, he wants to open up $500 billion in capital for the Black community, which would lead to 3 million new jobs in the Black community and creating 500,000 Black-owned businesses. And that goes on top of the opportunity zones that was started by Republican Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina, which is investing in communities as well to encourage entrepreneurship. He listened, the administration did, to Ice Cube, who has a contract out there that he's talked about, I believe contract for African American. So the Trump administration actually sat down and listened to him. Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, listened to what he had to say and adjusted some points in their plans. The Biden administration said, we'll talk to you when we win or if we win. So it's shoving aside the African American community, pretty much taking them for granted, as I believe the Democrats have for maybe 60 years. But the Trump administration is pushing hard for the African American community, and frankly, all communities, right? When you look at his economic policies of lowering taxes and lowering regulation, that allows businesses to invest. And before the pandemic hit, there was the lowest ever unemployment rate recorded for African American. I believe it was 3.5%, and the lowest ever for Hispanic American. If the pandemic didn't hit, he would have most likely skated to re-election. But now that it hit, of course, the economy got hit hard. And it really annoys me when you hear the Democrats say how bad the economy is, right? Ignoring the fact that it's a worldwide pandemic that created. He's given permanent funding, the Trump administration, President Trump, to HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. Every year they'd have to come, he says, to go to the White House and beg for money. And President Trump said, why do you have to come all the time? This should be fixed for a long-term basis. So now there's permanent funding of $250 million to help HBCUs. And no one else had done that in the past.
Do you feel like especially like the information that you just put out now, like a lot of Black people, they don't know about this. Do you feel like this gets put in the media at the forefront, or it just gets pushed away?
Well, the sad thing, maybe one of the good things about President Trump's presidency, not good for him, but what's maybe good to open people's eyes if they want their eyes to be open, is that he's exposed the hypocrisy, how fake and corrupt the mainstream media is. I mean, we don't need to get into the details really now about Joe Biden's son, Hunter, and supposed payoffs that he got, that he maybe gave to his father and his brother through the years. These are documented emails. No one other than Fox News is talking about it. The New York Post is the paper that published this, and Twitter blocked the New York Post just until yesterday. So he exposed how big tech, meaning Facebook, Google, and Twitter particularly, and the media, specifically CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, Washington Post, and frankly, all the broadcast networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, they're not covering this story. So if you want to be an informed citizen, I'd say watch real news, Fox News. You have conservative African Americans on there. And you know who else you have on there? You have a former Democrat, Leo Terrell, civil rights lawyer for 30 years, who's proudly calling himself now Leo 2.0, and he's voting Republican for the first time in his life. So they're conservatives out there. There's Candace Owens, right? Brandon Tatum, right? They're voices that should be heard. You have to make the effort, right? Everyone needs to make an effort, right?
Absolutely.
I personally, we talk about this on the show. Like, I have a lot of problems with mainstream media not really covering things in an unbiased standpoint. It's a lot of more opinions than facts. But do you honestly feel, though, even because with mainstream media in general, do you feel like Fox isn't biased as well?
They lean right, but you're going to get more debate on Fox than you do on the other networks. And on Fox, you know, they're saying it always been fair and balanced, right? You decide, right? And frankly, I think at times they're too balanced, because I don't want to hear a Biden speech on Fox News, because the other networks are only playing Biden speeches and blacking out Trump speeches. But on Fox, you get Biden speeches and Trump speeches. In fact, they cut into the middle of a Trump speech the other day to play Biden, and I was going nuts on that. So I think in this partisan world, they're one of the few outlets that conservatives and Republicans have. But yeah, they lean right, but you see them as biased because the other side is so far left. I would say Fox is center right, and the other networks are totally left. They left the country, to be honest.
All right, I respect that. I don't know if I 100% agree, but I do respect that. I know you had a very important question, not only about the presidency, but just Republican and Democrats in the Congress, right?
Oh, yes. I wanted to know, like, with so many conservatives in the judicial branch, right? Like, do you believe it would make sense to have the Democratic majority in the Senate, or should it stay Republican? And if so, why do you believe that?
You mean with the legislature? You mean Congress or the Supreme Court? You mean Congress?
So you're saying basically there's a lot of conservatives on the Supreme Court now, right?
Yeah.
So they're saying, and the Senate gets to vote them in. So to balance it out, should that now be switched over to Democratic, leadership, or do you think that the Republicans should maintain the majority in there?
I don't trust the Democrats anymore. They used to be a party where you could have bipartisanship. I think they're too far left right now. I think they're socialist, borderline communist. They don't want to make any deals. Again, they have to deal with the House of Representatives, who has AOC, right? President Trump says AOC +3, right? With Omar, right? Ilhan Omar, and Rashid Tlaib, right? Leftists, I would argue anti-Semites, but that's besides the point. The fact is they're very left wing. So I don't think, I think it would be terrible if the Democrats took over in the Senate. They need to become a responsible party again, because what they're talking about, if God forbid they took the White House and the Senate, assuming they kept the House, they want to destroy the Supreme Court as it stood, because they just don't happen to like the rules. The rules say the president gets to nominate a Supreme Court justice. And if it just happened that President Trump got 3, right? Obama would have.
Not to cut you off, but the Republicans did come up with the new rule to not do that during an election year, and then kind of switch back on that.
Oh, look, I'll repeat what McConnell said, the majority leader in the Senate. He said, it's one thing to do it when the Senate is the opposite party than the White House, right? The White House, Obama, a Democrat, the Senate was a Republican. So they had it in their power not to push it through. Frankly, I thought they should have out of respect. But now when you have a president of the same party and the Senate in the same party, can you honestly tell me if the shoe was on the other foot, right? If the Democrats had that, they wouldn't have done it, right?
No, I agree. Right?
Mm-hmm. And frankly, our RBG, people have said she should have retired and then maybe a year earlier vacated her seat when perhaps before an election year. But, I give you that. But again, that was the argument, the split Senate and White House was why he didn't push it through.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now, as far as it does seem maybe he's losing some support from the Jewish community, right? Why do you think there may be a slight disconnect? And why do you feel the Jewish community, because you're Jewish yourself, sir, so why do you feel like they should be supporting this president, this party right now?
Look, like the African-American community, there's a tendency to stick with tradition and be with the party you're used to have been with. And before 1960, African-Americans were Republican, but after Kennedy, the shift was towards the Democrat Party. Jewish people have pretty much always been aligned with the Democrat Party. They saw the progressive movement, social justice, that has always been dear to the heart of Jewish Americans. But I think they've been blinded by a lot of the negative rhetoric towards President Trump, and it's sort of been part of an elitist New York, California, Hollywood cabal that Trump is evil and bad and just a terrible person. Now, there is the Republican Jewish coalition that I belong to, and there are Jewish people who do appreciate all that he's done. People who love Israel. I have to tell you, a lot of liberal left-wing Jews don't love Israel as much anymore as older Jews. Some maybe couldn't care less. And Israel's not a monolithic country either. They're left-wing kooks in Israel as well as, more conservative. They're a split society too. But the Jewish community seems to go at least 80%, if not more, to the Democrats. And it's because of tradition and rhetoric. But President Trump moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, something every president in maybe the last 30 years promised to do. And then when they became president, they said, oh, it's too risky, and they didn't do it. He did it. He's had now 3 peace deals with Arab countries, Israel and the UAE, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Israel, and Sudan. He's put executive orders to limit funding to colleges where there's anti-Semitism in there. Because if you look in the colleges, there's a lot of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel rhetoric out there. Free speech is a problem in colleges. So he put in this executive order to punish the colleges that do that. Famed lawyer Alan Dershowitz, Democrat liberal. I still don't get it. I still think he's voting Democrat, right? Democratic. But he said President Trump has really done a great thing, one of the great things for the Jewish people. And just like the African American community needs to get woke on how good Trump has been, the same is with the Jewish community. So I think he's getting more maybe than he did 4 years ago, but he's definitely not getting enough, and it's a problem.
Okay. So actually, speaking of the accomplishments, because I will definitely give props on what Trump was able to do in the Middle East. What would you say is President Trump's biggest victories internationally and his biggest victory domestically?
Oh, that's good. internationally, maybe not going to war yet with North Korea, right?
I think that's a good. Yeah, we talked about that one.
We talked about that yesterday.
And coming up with Rocket Man, coming up with the name Rocket Man was a good one, you know, right? I think you may be surprised at this because people will say that he's harmed our alliances. They say he's too tough on our friends and friendly to the dictators. He's too tough on Germany and France, our allies in NATO. He berates them too much. But guess what? Why was he angry at them? Because the US puts the most money in NATO to defend Europe, and they're not paying their fair share. He says there's sort of an agreement that each country should pay at least 2% or 2.5% of their GDP, gross domestic product, right? And they're not doing it. And because he put pressure on them, he's gotten billions of dollars more money into NATO than had been there before. So I think his toughness has actually made the alliance militarily stronger. But as I'm talking, you know what I think was the number one? He got rid of ISIS. Remember ISIS? Remember that? Beheading people all over, destroying statues, which unfortunately was happening in this country not too long ago, which was a disgrace to see. But you see what ISIS was doing? He took the gloves off and decimated them. You hardly hear about ISIS anymore. So he brought back American strength internationally. Domestically, I'd say building the wall to lower illegal immigrants from coming into this country, but it's not just illegal immigrants referring to people who want better lives. You know, that has to be worked on. But we're talking drugs coming into the country, bad people, as he would say, the sexual traffic industry. So it's not just good, innocent people who want better lives coming in, and they should come in legally. I mean, we need to fix this system, but he's limited bad people from coming into the country as well.
I know you had an important question about
Oh yeah. I wanted to talk about the Obama healthcare because I know like Trump is working diligently to get rid of it. So I just wanted to know, why do you feel like it's flawed and it should be abolished? Like it should not, like Obama healthcare should not be, like nobody should have it.
Look, our country needs better healthcare. The problem with Obamacare is that it didn't really cover people the way people needed to be covered. So they may have health care in name, but in practice, the premiums were very high and they were not getting covered as much as they should. The big issue about covering people with pre-existing conditions, that's a beautiful thing. And finally, that is in our language. And President Trump has said, no matter what, he and the Republicans will not allow pre-existing conditions to not be covered. It's fair to criticize President Trump for not, and the Republicans, for not coming up with a viable replacement. And so when there's no real replacement, to say you're going to get rid of something that's there, even if it's bad, is a fair criticism of him. But while he's been president, he's brought drug prices down. And he again signed an order that's starting in January. So if President Trump doesn't win, Biden will probably enjoy this one. But he created a favored nation status with drugs. So instead of the U.S. paying more for drugs than other countries, he says the U.S. will pay the price as other countries do, and the lowest price for drugs that another country pays, that will be our price. And you're going to see drug prices go down. So he's done what he could. The Republicans needed to do more with with healthcare. But you know, look, if Obamacare was great, there'd be no reason to get rid of it.
Right.
So I know, like, I feel like the biggest, and I want to know your perception on this, right? Because the Obamacare definitely has flaws, but it does lay out a platform and take the country to the next level of better healthcare for the country. Do you feel like the main reason they're not building on the plan that's already there is because it's from the other side, rather than the plan being so flawed we can't work with it at all?
I can't say. I think that would be stupid to get rid of something that was working just to get even with the previous president. Though you never know what goes on in the back of people's minds. But he is working with it, whether or not the Supreme Court turns it down or not, or just gets rid of it completely, which I frankly don't see happening. The issue at this point, though, guys, is Medicare for all and losing your private insurance. So Biden says he doesn't want to get rid of private insurance, but the left wing of his party, which frankly is controlling him. I mean, if anyone sees Biden, who comes out maybe once, like a groundhog, he comes out maybe once, sees his shadow and runs away or runs to a state nearby and give a speech and hardly takes any questions, right? So he's controlled by the left wing of his party, which wants Medicare for all. Where's the money gonna come from that? So you wanna tax everybody. What's that gonna do to the economy? So at this point, it's not just trying to work with Obamacare to make it better, which the Trump administration has been, has been having to do, because it's still there. But let's see if both parties can come up with a much better plan.
That actually transitions to our last question, and I feel like it's the most important to me, maybe to our viewers as well. But within the next leader, the biggest thing we want to see is unification, right? Instead of being the States of America, we want to be the United States of America. There's always been division in the country from the beginning, but what can your candidate do? You think that's even part of his interest to unify the country, and how can he do it? Because we have seen a lot of division in the past 4 years.
What's sad about the Trump presidency is that from the moment he won, if you listen to his speech when he won the election and people were saying about Hillary, lock her up, he said, no, that's over now. He really wanted to unify the country. But look what the Democrats did. Aside from the fact that they spied on his campaign and put this Russian collusion lie on him, okay? They boycotted his inaugural. They painted him as illegitimate. John Lewis, God bless his soul, he's done great things for civil rights, but he was one of the guys who boycotted his inaugural and sent the message that it's okay to turn your back on this guy. So all of this about the Democrats being unifiers and Trump being the divider, they divided this nation by how they treated him once he got elected. And so his only recourse was to defend himself and his base, and he accomplished a lot in that regard. Look how the women were protesting against him. Look at the anarchists in the streets when he took over. They didn't accept him, and they tried to overthrow him. So when someone wants to kill you, you can't, they won't let you unify. If you look, anyone who tried to give him a semblance of presidential treatment, they were criticized and canceled for normalizing him, for humanizing him. So the only way this country can be unified is if he beats the Democrats so badly in this election that maybe they'll finally accept him and work with him, because it's not his fault when he has the whole media against him, all the Democrats, Hollywood, everyone who portrays him in the worst possible way. They call him a white supremacist. Why is it he can condemn white supremacy 50 times, and yet he still gets asked that question about white supremacy? It's really unfair. Yet Biden doesn't get asked about Antifa or those committing violence on his watch or in his name. So it's just
But
totally.
to be fair, I just have to say on that point, right? Because the biggest perception, and even I've seen it, and when Trump does get asked about white supremacy, he'll kind of like more brush it off than he feel like clearly denounce it. And I think he has done clearly denounce it by now. You know, I've seen it. But I think the problem was when they asked him about it, he'll like denounce it for like 2 seconds and then go on Black Lives Matters for like 2 minutes. You know, and there's like one group, it's clearly made it known we're out hunting this thing. There are some bad apples in Black Lives Matter, and there's some people that just believe like, hey, you know, we want to be
But
heard,
it's, you know, they in that last debate, the first debate, they mentioned this obscure group, the Proud Boys. I'd never heard of them. Who the hell are they? Right. So, but the media heard of him and they want him to condemn it. So he like misspoke. He said, stand up, stand by, right? He just misspoke. Oh, he's telling them to stand by. And I mean, it's just ridiculous. And Biden says the reason he decided to run for president because of what happened in Charlottesville, right? In Virginia, when he said there's fine people on both sides. But they delete and ignore that he said within that statement, and I'm not talking about the white supremacists and the KKK and neo-Nazis. I'm not talking about them. I condemn them. To hell with them, pretty much, he said, right? So they ignore, they excise that part from what he said. Totally disgraceful and unfair. And just, guys, I think we talked about a lot economically what President Trump would do for the Black community. Let's not forget what he's done in other aspects. Prison reform, the First Step Act, right? That's something that wasn't done before. Even CNN Trump basher Van Jones gave President Trump credit for that. In fact, he worked with President Trump on that and just recently said he doesn't get enough credit from the Black community for that. So, you know, look up Alice Johnson, okay? And you know, Alice Johnson, she had a life sentence for bringing drugs over the border. It might have been 3 strikes you're out, or just one of these deals where she was gonna have a life sentence. Kim Kardashian brought this case to him, and he commuted her sentence, gave her a complete pardon. She loves Trump. She thanks him for what he's done. And it's another case where he doesn't get credit. And this is a unique aspect. Kim Kardashian, you can laugh her off, but he met with her. He met with Kanye West. He'll meet with anybody that wants to deal with him or meet with him. So he's ready to unify. But when you've got people who call him names, LeBron James calling him a bum, you got people saying negative things about him that have clout in certain communities, right? It feels just natural to turn your back on him. And to Kim Kardashian's credit, they want him to condemn him. She's not condemned him. Whether or not she votes for him, who knows? Kanye West, he wants, I guess, people to vote for him, right? Which is, I think, a shame, because he may lose Minnesota for Trump if enough people vote for Kanye. But the fact is, he'll listen to anyone who gives him a fair shake or has a good idea. He's a businessman. His favorite color is not white, it's green, okay? And he wants to share it with everybody.
Okay, well, thank you. That was very well said. We appreciate you being on our podcast and bringing a lot of clarity and really open viewers' eyes. November 3rd, we want to make sure all you guys are going out to vote, man. Make sure you guys are voting. Vote. Early voting has started. Vote if you can now. Otherwise, get to those polls. Again, we thank you, Mr. Steve.
If you don't mind my bear here, but he kept me company, right? He was whispering in my ear things I should say. I guess like Biden has stuff in his ear, right?
Giving you the keys to success.
Kate, Don, Wraith, thank you very much. It was an honor to be on with you and to share my thoughts. And I hope your viewers and listeners take seriously how good a president President Trump has been and will be even greater if given the chance.
Awesome. Thank you for your time, Mr. Steve.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Like a podcast, put the work in, trying to make it last. Seen enough deaths, I don't need no more. It's like our nation trying to start a civil war. We gotta show love first, like a podcast. Put the work in, trying to make it last. Seen enough deaths, I don't need no more. It's like our nation trying to start a civil war.
Black, Latin, Indian, Asian, and white. Whole lives matter, but let's get it right. There's a specific group of people needing help right now. All lives matter, yeah, no, calm down. So can we get together, stop the hurting right now? It's getting too political now. If you had enough of it, then stop with the blackouts and the non-support and push focuses on businesses we should support. Shouldn't have to force to get together like community. Only get together the eulogies. We killing ourselves, fatality. Ain't no actuality. We killing ourselves more than police do. We need to come together as a people.
We gotta show love first, like our podcast.